The Peace Dependency podcast is brought to you by Total Red NES. Shop your Goofy Food Controller TWO merch and CTWC approved hardware on TotalRedNES.com. Welcome to the Peace Dependency podcast. I'm your host, Frank, also known as Sir Mazer. Today on the show, we have someone that if you say two words, everyone knows who I'm talking about. Those words are hell yeah. Yes, it's true. Grand Designs is on the show today. We talked about the origin of the hell yeah catchphrase, being the creator of classic Tetris Wars, and his commentary career. This is our conversation. Grand Designs, welcome to the Peace Dependency podcast, and thank you so much for doing this.
Hell yeah! So glad to do it. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of this, Mr. Razor.
Hey, first question is always the same question to everyone who's new on the podcast, and that is, how did you get into NES Tetris?
That's actually a pretty long story, so I'll go ahead and I'll just get started at the very beginning. First time I ever played NES Tetris was actually when I went to the Nintendo World Championships 1990, which, as we all know, is where Tetris in a whole as a scene began at the very, very beginning with Thor and all them. So what I did actually was my mom and dad, I was 7 years old at the time, took me there. I remember just thinking, all right, this is going to be a fun place to play competition. I remember going to a kiosk and playing 6 minutes of Super Mario Brothers 3 before it was actually released in America. That was a lot of fun to play. I just went through a few levels. Was a little bummed, but can't wait for the game that came out. Then I went over to a little row of TVs where they were having first rounds for the Nintendo World Championships. And I remember playing the 3 games of 50 coins of Mario 1, doing one custom course of Rad Racer, and then playing for the rest of it in Tetris. I had never played Tetris in my life prior to doing that, so I wasn't sure what to expect. And I felt a little bit bummed because I was able to practice the other 2 games because I owned Rad Racer and owned Super Mario Brothers. So when I get to the Tetris part, I remember only getting to level 1 before the timer ended. I think I ended with like 103,000 points and didn't even make it to the next round. Oh, yeah. But I loved the game of Tetris, even though I only played it for a couple minutes there. And I had my mom buy me the actual Tetris cartridge, and I pretty much fell in love with the game right then and there.
At that moment, you said to your mom, I want to play the Tetris game.
Yes.
So why did you own Super Mario? Why did you own Rad Racer but didn't own Tetris?
Because Tetris, I only briefly heard of it from commercials on TV and from reading Nintendo Power. I never actually had it, never knew how big of a game it was going to be. And it wasn't anything that was really widely talked about in school or anything. Because I was in elementary school at the time.
How much time did you devote early 90s in the Tetris game?
Only a little bit. I only played it very casually because I was just more an all-rounder when it came to video games back then. I probably had about 50 or 60 NES games I just constantly cycled through. Tetris,
oh, really?
Tetris was just one of many. I would say my PB at the time was maybe a little over 100,000 playing on level 9, which at the time among your friends and stuff and among casual people seemed really good, and I felt that I was really good at it. Yeah, I remember the first time I ever played level 19, I was thinking, this is impossible. How could anybody physically possibly play at this level? I can't even push the pieces down. They're coming down so fast. I remember feeling like I can get 1 or 2 lines maximum on level 19 back when I was a little kid.
How did you become better and better at Tetris then?
Yeah, that's the next part of the story. So Tetris was always just a little casual game I would dabble with. Then I hardly played it at all after the early to mid 90s. I dabbled with it again in the mid 2000s for maybe a week or 2, put it down again, dabble with it again in 2012 or so, another one for maybe a week or so and put it down again. Then fast forward to 2018 when I was going to a local convention in Pittsburgh where I live at, they had the CTWC there, which was the East Coast qualifier. And I remember thinking to myself, all right, I used to like playing Tetris as a kid. This might be fun to try and play a little bit. So I spent about a week or so trying to practice at home, thinking, all right, I'm going to go have a lot of fun. Needless to say, when I went there and saw how good the hardcore Tetris players were, I was like, what the heck am I doing here? What? Just total deer in the headlights look.
So you never knew about the Tetris scene, about CTWC prior to 2018?
I think the only thing I knew about it is I knew the name Jonas Neubauer. That was it.
How did you know about Jonas then?
I think just from reading random things over the years that his name just came up as a champion Tetris player. I think he was the only Tetris player I heard of prior to 2018. That was just random, out of nowhere knowledge, like not really following the
game. You said you played the game for 2 weeks, mid-2000s. You played the game for 2 weeks in 2012. Was that like, oh, I see the NES Tetris cartridge, oh, let me play this. I had fond memories of it. And then just put it away and never really digged into the game, or if there was a community behind it?
I would say the main reason was the fact that there was really no community I could find behind it, because I was always just playing games by myself.
Yeah.
So 2018, I remember getting 161,000 from a level 9 start whenever I went to the qual. Obviously didn't end up making the top 8, but I remember just seeing how social and like everybody was there, just how cool the environment was. And then when I watched the top 8 later on in the evening, I was just thinking this would be really cool to be able to get on a stage and be able to play this stuff.
Yeah.
So, however, I ended up falling back out of it again because I just felt like there was a lot of other games I was still playing. And overall, like the only people really watching the finals were the people in it. So I felt it was just too niche of a scene for me to really get into.
What you were interested in 2018 then, game-wise?
Yeah, I was basically on a real retro kick at the time where I was just going through a lot of NES and SNES, like platformers and RPG games. Like the Final Fantasy series, the old Dragon Warrior series, the Mario games, Zelda games, Metroid games, like Donkey Kong Country games. I mean, I just played like a whole battery of like classic games, and I still play them to this day.
Do you play modern games then, or just stick to the retro games?
I do play some modern games, but I would say I probably play 80% retro, 20% modern.
Why is that?
Just because the retro games are what I grew up with, and like I just feel like I don't need to like throw so much of my life into these other games that are just like open world. I mean, like just learning how to like play with all the modern controls and everything. I mean, it's just I enjoy doing it on some games, but retro is just what I grew up with. That's my wheelhouse.
How many games do you own?
I would say I own about 170 NES games, maybe about 50 SNES games. Those are for the retros. Like PlayStation, maybe about 20 or 30. Sega Genesis, maybe about around the same amount. But newer games, I probably own about 30 or 40 Nintendo Switch games. I have a handful of PS4 games too. So overall, I do run the gamut all the way from NES up to like I own a PS4, I own a Switch too.
Yeah, I do own a Switch too. I think of the 3 main console, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, or I do like the Nintendo consoles the most.
Yeah, I always have. And even with Switch, I mean, when I say I still sometimes play modern games, me and my wife are currently playing the new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet together.
Oh, nice. We play a lot of Mario Party, Mario Kart. I played. The reason we got the Switch was because I was telling to my wife weeks after weeks that I wanted to play The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild game. I couldn't play because we didn't own a Switch, so she bought it for us for Christmas in 2018 or so.
Yeah.
So you visit the convention in Pittsburgh in 2018. You thought it was a really niche community, but how did you return to the community then, or how did you rediscover the game?
Okay, so that's the next part of my story. Is 2019, the very next year, they have the East Coast qualifier there again. So this time going in, I'm like, all right, I had a lot of fun last year. Maybe I'll try and practice the game a little more. So as I did the previous time, I spent about a week or so practicing it. But this time when I go to the convention, there's about 50 or so people all watching it, all interacting, and like tons and tons of people qualifying, it felt like it just exponentially multiplied from where it was just 1 year before that. And there was just something about sitting in the seats, a whole like 6 or 7 rows of like maybe like 10 or like 12 or more seats each, all totally filled, watching the finals. Like Jonas was actually there with Heather, like doing some commentating, and like they were able to just get everybody taking pictures with him, everybody just interacting. And there was something that just called out to me when I was just sitting in that crowd watching the game, saying, this is starting to become a really big community. I want to actually start to play this game seriously. So then maybe like a little bit after that convention, it was September 3rd, 2019, I started to play the game seriously and been tracking my scores ever since.
And what was your first actual PB then?
I can actually bring that up for you right now because I have a notepad of my entire PB progression all the way from
wow.
So 9/3/2019, I got 22 lines on level 19 and 149,000 at a level 18 start. So going from there, I have a couple other milestones I'll fast forward to right here. I got my first 400K on October 14th, 2019. I got my first 500K on October 23rd, 2019. Then it was a little bit of a gap after that. I got my first 600 in March 22nd, 2020. Then my first 700K was June 24th, 2020. Then I had a big gap after that of about 9 months. It was February 2021. I got my first 800K. And then my first 900K was July 2021.
And you're still waiting for a max out?
Still waiting for it. Still playing every single day or almost every single day trying to get one. Haven't gotten it yet, but my consistency's gone through the roof, and I'll still take that any day.
Yeah, oh my. You played in 2019 without the community. You played by yourself.
Yes.
So how did you play? Did you look on YouTube for videos, how to be better? Did you try to look for forums like the Tetris Concept forums?
The two things I did the most were I watched some of Jonas's stacking videos, and I also looked at some of the Tetris Concept forums at the time. But beyond that, I wasn't really aware of the Discords other than knowing about CTM, Classic Tetris Monthly. So I told myself at the time, like I was going to start practicing, and I'm like, whenever I feel I'm good enough, I'll maybe join the community. I had no idea that the community expanded all the way to like novice level players that were just getting started. I would have joined it sooner.
But did you follow Classic Tetris while you were playing Tetris yourself?
I followed the CTWC. A fun story, actually, is me and my wife actually filled out March Madness brackets and made friendly bets against each other to see who was going to win the 2019 tournament. we both watched the whole 2019 tournament together when I was about 2 months into my training.
Oh, wow. You know what I hear is it's pure dedication and passion for the game and for the community.
Yeah, I genuinely love the game. And I'll say this, I just turned 40 years old a few weeks ago, November 4th, actually. And this is the greatest hobby and greatest community I've ever been a part of in my entire life. I sincerely mean that.
What is it then that you're so passionate about the game and so passionate about the community?
It's just everybody is just so friendly and everybody just wants to constantly push everybody else to be better and just provide a real outlet for people to just be themselves. And there's so many other communities that I've seen where it's just so hyper competitive that there's really not a lot of socialization. And then like whenever you go somewhere to do a competition, for example, you get a feeling of like, hey, you're expected to know these rules. You're not like the people might have looked down on you in certain ways. And I just never was able to really get into a lot of other communities. But Tetris was different. I have never, in the over 2 years I've been a part of the Classic Tetris community in the Discords, never run into anybody toxic.
It's a genuinely friendly community.
It is. And just, I always tell myself, my biggest goal as a member of the community is to push the community forward. I don't care if I never get another PB. I don't care if I never win another single competitive match. If I can do something that pushes the community forward, even knowing I could never get one of those things again, if I did that, I would choose it without thinking twice. The community is the most important thing to me more than any game or any score.
I think to me, if I do compare it to myself, like I'm a 600k player currently.
Yeah.
I grinded my I had a 500k PB, and I took a year before I got my next PB, and I really lost interested in playing competitive matches as a player itself.
Yeah.
But I do love the community so much. I think the game is evolving massively, and it's amazing to be a part of it. And it's amazing that you can be in a community or can help the community moving forward without actually playing the game a lot. Like, for example, organizing tournaments, hosting this podcast, doing restreams, helping like behind the scenes stuff and all that. It's just amazing that so many people are doing their part of the community without actually playing the game.
That's one of those things that other communities really don't give you the chance to do. One of the things that drew me in a lot when I first joined the Discords in September 2020 is just seeing how all the tournaments were set up and how the concept of restreaming worked, where every tournament wasn't something that had to be like in a set time, set person commentating it, set scene, like everything was just so like cookie cutter, you really couldn't grow and develop it. Everybody had their own styles for restreaming. Everybody had their own scene. You didn't need to have any experience to do it. And it just felt like it was so free for people to just develop themselves into whatever they wanted to be in the community. And then after a few months or so, I just said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to be a dog. I'm not going to be Andy. I'm not going to be like one of those superstar players that like can just completely destroy even people that have like 1.2s and 1.3s. I want to do something to really push the community forward and make my mark, even if I can't do it as a player. And that's where I found restreaming, because I'm like, I can make my own scenes, I can bring my own style to it. And then whatever comes from there comes from there. I mean, I have ways to push the community forward without playing. And that's something you really can't find other places.
Exactly. But at what moment were you like, okay, now it's the time to actually join the community?
When I hit the 1 year mark of my training in September 2020, because at the time I was I think a 700k player. I'd been grinding it for a year. I felt like I was getting to the point where my 18 was pretty solid. My 19 was still hit or miss, but I'm thinking, all right, I've been doing this long enough. I know from reading the Tetris concept forums that they had multiple tiers of Classic Tetris Monthly, CTM. So I'm like, all right, maybe I can get into one of the lower tiers. So I joined the Discords after that. Then I heard about some of the other ones like CTL, Classic Tetris League, like Classic Tetris Gauntlet that Sharky runs, which my opinion is is a really, really innovative concept, really pushing Tetris in general to become a full-blown esport. If there's anything I can do to give a shout out to Sharky for Classic Tetris Gauntlet, I always want to do, and I want to give one here.
I mean, Gauntlet, what Sharky did with Gauntlet, especially since moving to the teams format with a full-blown regular season with a postseason. It's not CTL, it's a true esport.
It is. And actually, like, if people watch my own personal commentary style, I draw from sports. Like, I want to be a sportscaster. I want players playing in my events to feel like superstars. I want them to feel like the lights are on them. I want them to feel like the crowds are cheering. I want the people watching the game to feel like they're in the game because of the energy that I bring to it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your commentary, because your style as a commentator is very hype focused. I think you're one of the few who can truly challenge Kingsman in terms of giving a hype to the match, the intensity of commentating during a match. Is it always something you envisioned yourself to do when you started doing commentary?
It actually was. And I would say that Kingsman, along with Sharky, were probably two of my biggest influences when I first started getting into restreaming. Because some of the earliest competitive matches I played were on Tetris friendlies. And like with Burb Wizard doing it and King doing it, I mean, that's another shout out there. Tetris friendlies is always a highlight of my week, and I try to play every single week if I can. Even if I'm busy the rest of the week, I try to carve out a little bit of time to play in friendlies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another big shout out to them. They run an awesome operation. Kingsman with friendlies and then Burb Wizard helping out there. But I would say that Kingsman really bringing like the pro wrestling feel, like with all the belts that he does, with all the hype that he does, like bringing the bells and stuff, just like talking about like just getting everybody in the chat involved and just really pumping everything up and making it feel like a big grand stage was a huge inspiration to me. And as I mentioned before, Sharky was also an inspiration to me because of how his general commentary style scaled up to really make you feel like you're in a full-blown sport. So the two of them were probably among my biggest influences when I was starting to get into commentating. A couple other commentators that I felt were really big influences on me. Heist was a big influence on my commentary because they were somebody that I felt really interacted a lot with the chat overall and just constantly made everybody just feel like they were a big community in the game, but at the same time not losing track of the actual game that was in progress. Being able to balance between commentating the game and this making the crowd also feel that they were involved as well. So they were another pretty big influence on me. I would say another influence after that would probably be Kiwi Byte. I'm not sure if you've ever seen Kiwi Byte restream. It does a lot of CTM restreams, but Kiwi is somebody that I felt had a lot of game knowledge, was able to impart a lot of knowledge about mechanics of the game while commentating. That wasn't just general like, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. It would like they would explain why certain things were happening and talk a lot about the strategy and styles of the players and why they were making certain moves, and then like possibly theorizing other moves they could possibly make based on their styles in the tournament. So I would say they were another influence. And I would say like around that time, Van Dweller was another influence as well, because Van Dweller had the ability to really bring that professional voice into Tetris to like keep the game going, but just sound like you really have a good flow. Like Van Dweller has a really good flow whenever he does a lot of the CTF master streams, and I feel is able to engage a lot of people and like keep things going to where even during like lulls in the game, everybody's still interacting. You know, the game is still going on. Like being able to have that pattern is another influence that I drew. So I would say around that time, late 2020, early 2021, those were the 5 people that I feel had the most influence on my style.
Did you have any prior experience commentating something?
I did not, actually. This was my first ever commentary.
So do you remember your first restream?
My very first restream that I still remember was calling a really hype battle between Eve C and Pissarce. Because I remember Eve C hit a PB of like 780,000 and Pissarce nearly hit a PB. And I think it was a Division 7 match in CTL where you normally don't see players just throwing huge scores like that. And I remember just like pouring in the hype. And it was the first time that I really like threw an enormous amount of energy into a stream. It was probably my 3rd or 4th overall restream, but it's probably the earliest one that I clearly remember to this day.
So how did you develop being hyped about the match, trying to keep a certain flow of the match?
A lot of that comes from watching a lot of American sports. Like when you watch hockey, for example, you have a hockey announcer constantly doing play-by-play action. And then whenever like it's getting close to a goal, you can hear the announcers like energy start to like rise up, just in anticipation of that shot on goal, and then explode whenever the goal comes in. I always wanted to be able to bring like a sportscaster's feel into Tetris. So I draw inspiration from like hockey announcers, football announcers, like even in some cases baseball announcers too, and like basketball announcers, because I just feel that if we want to make Tetris an esport, let's make it actually feel like a sport. And I just want to bring that to all my restreams.
Who are your influences outside of the Tetris world then?
I would say as far as commentary, I would probably most of them were sort of like local sportscasters from like I follow Pittsburgh sports. A sportscaster by the name of Mike Lang, who used to commentate the Pittsburgh Penguins for like.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know if you know it, but I'm a big fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Love it. Hell yeah.
So yeah, I do know Mike Lang. When my first child was born and she was awake during the nights, I always, and when the Pens were playing, I didn't want to watch TV because of the lighting and all that, because it was
Yeah.
pretty dark in the living room. So I always booted up the Penguins app and started listening to Mike Lang on the Pens Radio Network.
Nice. But really, like, a lot of the sayings that he would come up with, I always like to come up with some of my own sayings during a Tetris match, in a sense, trying to be like the Mike Lang of Tetris when I come up with really good puns or just really good out of nowhere things that might not make sense, but it's just something memorable to say that people are going to say next.
I mean, you do have a catchphrase for pretty much every game. Game 1, Game 2, Game 3. Like, I can't remember them, but
Yeah,
it seems like you have a catchphrase for every game.
I do, and like those didn't come; those came just naturally. I didn't like sit down and write them down. I can name them right now. It's game number 1 is on the run. Game number 2 is coming straight to you. Game number 3 is breaking free. Game number 4 is coming to your door, and game number 5 comes alive. I have some other ones for my personal server when I go up to 6, 7, 8, 9. Like game number 6 kicks us into the mix. Game number 7's taking us to heaven. Game number 8 decides our fate, and game number 9 puts it all on the line.
I mean, is it something you say once and then chat is reacting to it and you think, okay, this needs to stick? Or is it something that you say over and over and over again that you know it's something that people are now used to?
A lot of times I read off of the chat, because sometimes I'll say something, like I'll make a reference and some people in the chat are like, what's that? Then I realize I'm 40 years old and I'm like, most people that might be in their teens or 20s might not even understand that reference. So some of those I might not use as much. But I try to get a feel like from the chat whenever I say something, is this something I like? And a lot of times I don't plan it in advance. I just say what's on my mind and just ad-lib it. I feel it comes out more naturally when I do that.
I think as a especially as a restreamer or commentator in classic Tetris, you can prepare a lot, but the actual commentary itself needs to be ad-lib, needs to be improv.
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of my commentary I improv, but occasionally, let's say 5% of it I don't improv, or just my tried and true catchphrases that I know are hits with everybody. Hell yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest one.
Yeah. And I'll tell you how that came about too, is when I got my first 800K on video in February 2021, I remember trying to say, oh yeah, like I was excited, like, oh yeah. And I said it like, first 800,000, ha yeah. Like I meant to say, oh yeah, but it came out as ha yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm like, okay, this sounds pretty good. A couple people in the chat thought I said hell yeah when I started saying it in restreams, when I actually wasn't saying hell yeah. It was ha yeah, like, oh yeah. But it just, so many people thought it was hell yeah after my first like 3, 4, or 5 restreams. I'm like, you know what? It's hell yeah now.
Everyone who talks about grand designs end their sentence with hell yeah.
Honestly, I had no idea it was going to become such a ubiquitous catchphrase in the classic Tetris community. Like I was just thinking like, okay, it's something I'm saying. It gets the crowd powered up. I would say probably the first time that I realized how much of a catchphrase it was actually becoming was when one of the CTL draws, for Division 5, whenever Kingsman was announcing the draw with Moodoos, and Kingsman was like, hell yeah, it's grand designs. I'm like, wow, other people are saying hell yeah now. It was a few months after I originally started saying it, but that was a moment where I'm like, all right, this is starting to become a pretty big catchphrase.
I mean, it is. Like I said, every time we talked about grand designs, or every time we talked about Classic Tetris Wars, which is a creation of yours.
Yes.
We always end the sentence with hell yeah. When I announced that you were going to be on a podcast, that if people had suggestions what we need to talk about, I ended with hell yeah. Just before every recording, I upload on the Instagram page a story, and I end with hell yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love when people use that catchphrase, because I say to myself, hey, it means that I'm in people's minds and I'm making a difference in people whenever they're using my catchphrase. That like they could just associate it with me. And if I did something in the classic Tetris community, which has thousands of people in it, to where people can associate something with me that I do in my restreams, I did a pretty good job. So I love when people use it.
But it's catchy though.
I know.
I mean, I think everyone wants to shout hell yeah. It's so simple, you know?
That's what and the thing that's awesome about it is I didn't plan it either. It just organically came about.
But I think those are the best catchphrases.
I know. My second favorite catchphrase is all another one in the community when I yell no when somebody gets into like a really rough chase down, just barely misses it, or has a bad top out or something. That's another one that started to get a lot of traction.
The mic just didn't pick that up.
Oh no.
But it's what Kingsman always plays when there's an early top out or something on the friendly show.
I know. Anytime I hear that, the first few times I heard that, I'm just like, okay, I know I've made it in this community where people are playing clips of my voice. I love when they do that. And honestly, I just nod and smile whenever I make a mistake and they play it against me. I nod and smile because I deserve it.
But how difficult was it for you to balance it right? Like not being over high, but also not being too low for your standards?
I would say in the beginning, it was very difficult. I would say my first couple months of restreaming, I would just go 100 miles a minute every single restream. It would be like 100,000 in level 18. I would be like, hey, he's going to be getting another Tetris. Come on, he's up to 110,000. Come on, he's going to be able to keep getting this going. It's like, it was so early in a match that I wasn't leaving enough energy for the moments that was really deserved, like powering up the crowd. And that was something that over time, I've been restreaming now for about over 1.5 years, probably close to 2 years. I've learned through experience, trial and error, and taken a lot of feedback from a lot of other restreamers of learning how to like hone my style and really scale the hype and just balance it so where I can still maintain my overall style as a hype commentator, but leave energy for the end or the big digs or big moments whenever the crowd needs to be drawn into it and they're not, and like they're going to be ready to be pulled in and not already be there to not mean anything. So it just came from a lot of time and a lot of practice and feedback.
Saving all the energy, like how hard is it for you to do a 3 or 4 hour restream session?
I would say most of my sessions are about 1.5 to 2 hours for my classic Tetris Wars. Whenever I do some super streams for CTL that sometimes go 4 or 5 matches, when we get to the 4th or 5th match, there are times that I feel my voice starting to strain a little bit. So I do sometimes scale it down a little bit for the lower parts of the game on like level 18, whenever we get to the later matches, maybe not being as hype in some crazy moments that I would be in maybe the first, second, or third match. But I still try to leave as much energy as I can for the really big moments of the match. It is very difficult when I'm doing a really, really long super stream.
I think when I do the ELO Clash, it's 2.5 hours. So I have 10 matches on a 4-way scene.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable for one player. When I do the super streams on CTL, those are, I did CTL openings day, was 2.5 hours. That's okay. But when I host the Benelux Cup, PAL or NTSC, the final bracket, the top 8, is always between 3 to 4 hours, and I just can't do it by myself.
Yeah, I know. Like I think one of the hardest restreams I ever did was probably one of the times I had to do a full 5-player matchup in Classic Tetris Gauntlet, restreaming it by myself because I wasn't able to get any co-commentary. We were getting down towards the end. I felt like my voice was like hurting and cracking, but being a professional, I pushed through it towards the end. Like, and even when I watched the video back, like near that end on the 5th set, I was starting to like hear the crack in there. But being a professional, I'm just like, got to get through it. Got to go. But after that, I'm just telling myself, like, if I'm going to do 5 consecutive sets like that, I need a co-commentator. Generally, the most I like to do if I'm doing it myself is about 4.
Yeah, I think 4 is a sweet spot, like 2 hours or so.
Yeah, that's about my number, is like 2 hours. And like sometimes, like when I do Classic Tetris Wars, I mean, like, because I have 8 people going at the same time, I'm able to commentate in a different kind of style because there's always something going on in one of the games usually.
How do you try to save all the energy? Like if you have multiple days of restreaming, how do you try to save the energy? But most importantly, how do you try to save your voice?
I would say saving my voice, a lot of times, like whenever I do other Tetris related things, I try not to talk a whole lot unless I'm like answering things inside the chat. Like when I'm doing a self restream, for example, of just like grinding or just like doing a qual, I'll answer people in the chat. Like I want to interact with them all the time, but I try not to be like super talkative, like on camera, on mic, unless I'm actually doing a restream. And I would say outside of Tetris, I mean, I usually don't do a lot of screaming, so it really doesn't matter.
Do you have complaints from your neighbors?
No, not at all. Believe it or not. No.
Did you make your room soundproof or something?
No, I did not. But I have a pretty nice game room. If you've seen some of the pictures I posted.
Oh man, yeah. It's so impressive.
Thanks. Basically, when me and my wife got our house in summer 2020, I was just like, I was 37 at the time, and I'm like, this is the game room I dreamed of since I was a little kid. Now I have the house and I have the money to get it, so I'm getting it.
How did your wife react the first time you went screaming, like on commentary?
She basically thought I was going to blow her ears out. But she eventually got used to it.
She's not wearing earbuds or something like that to cancel out the noise.
No, she's upstairs usually. My game room's in my basement. She's above my head. So she knows what I'm doing. She says, like, there's times she's on our second level sleeping in our master bedroom. She's like, I can hear you clear all the way from our bedroom.
You remember when we did, I think it was Battle Royale, Classic Tetris Wars together.
Mm-hmm.
It was like midnight or something like that. And just like Kingsman, my wife just woke up and she said, I have noise canceling headphones, like really good headphones. And she said, I can hear the other person who you're commentating with through your headphones.
I know. I was commentating at CTWC for the silver bracket, and some people told me clear across the entire hall they could hear me commentating.
But it's also a style that it's disliked, or maybe it's not the right word, but it can scare off new viewers. It can scare off new players.
Yeah.
Is it something you try to think about, or is it something like get used to it?
I would say I try to think about it a lot. I would say the word to use about my style would be polarizing. Like, you either really like it or really don't like it. There's no middle ground with my style. But I would say I am very conscious of it, because I remember a restream that I did in August 2021. I was doing some commentary for the CTWC Ohio qualifier, commentating a little bit with Chris Bidwell there. And like, I was going my normal high energy style, which at the time I was still pretty green as a commentator. So I didn't really have the scaling down like I do now. And I just read a lot of YouTube comments where people were saying like, he's so annoying, he's so loud, he's overpowering. And I'm like, you know what? They might actually be right. So that was a key moment for me where I really started to seek out a lot of feedback and really work on honing my style to where it can keep casual people involved a lot, but at the same time, not lose track of who I am.
Yeah.
So that's real. That was a key moment for me when I started to really work on my style and not just try to blow people's ears out. At the same time, though, I am who I am. I have my own style, and I'm not going to change that style because then I wouldn't be myself. Because I want to be authentic when I do my restreams.
Is it something you want from other commentators, or do you enjoy a more quieter style from some commentators?
Honestly, I enjoy various different styles of commentary. There's really no set one that I like more than the other, because I like how everybody has their own unique style. Like no matter who's commentating, the one common denominator is they all love the game.
Which NES Tetris commentators do you like to listen to?
My favorite one to listen to is probably Sharky, because I think Sharky, not only would I mention Sharky was one of my biggest influences when I was starting out, but Sharky is one of my favorites to listen to because I feel he is the one commentator in the entire classic Tetris scene that I feel has the perfect balance of sounding really hype, but sounding really professional at the same time. Like he has the best of both worlds in a way that I feel like sounds almost like he could be a professional sportscaster.
Sharky did a lot of major streams last year.
Yes. And I would say another commentator I really like to listen to is Kingsman, because I just love how Kingsman brings the energy.
I used to, just like your style or your commentary and Kingsman commentary, I just needed to appreciate it. The first time I heard it, I was like, Oh my god, what the heck is this?
Uh-huh.
Started to appreciate it,
Yeah.
and I started to enjoy it.
Uh-huh. I would say a few other commentators I really enjoy. Frenchie's another one that I really enjoy listening to. They have a
Yes.
really, really great style of interacting with the chat and really like bringing good energy into the game. Having a good combination of like the game and the chat, putting it all together at the same time, and really like getting personal conversations with the members of the chat while keeping the game flowing. Frenchie's another one that I really think is a great one to listen to. Yeah, another one too would be Van Dweller. I like watching CTM Masters and like how Vandy like really keeps that professional aspect of like the enormity of the scene and all the people watching, and just keeps everybody into it. Another one also that I really like, Xenophilius is another one that I think is a really great restreamer to listen to too. Has a lot of really good like good flow with the game, and also like brings a lot of energy as well.
But but Xeno is the total opposite of you, like
Yeah.
commentary style wise.
Yeah, but I would say like even if people are a completely different style than me, I just enjoy so many different styles. And honestly, I mean some other restreamers as well. I mean, like Peyton just restreamed a match that I played today. Peyton's a great restreamer. I've noticed that Peyton's been like starting to add a lot more hype into their style as well. And I think has made Peyton a really, really great commentator. And Peyton's just getting better and better. Peyton's another one I really enjoy listening to. And another one too that I want to give a big shout out to is Colin. See Chris TM. I'm not sure if you've seen Colin's restreams. So Colin is a great commentator.
The barbershop restreamer.
Yep.
Right? Yes.
Yep, barbershop. I would say Colin's one of my favorites to listen to as well. And also Colin has done an enormous amount of work helping me with my restreams in Classic Tetris Wars. Has essentially been just like taken so much weight off of my back, helping me run tournaments there and helping me run weekly restreams there. Has done a lot to help push the community forward that building inside of CTW. So big shout out to Colin. And also, if I didn't mention your name to any of the other restreamers I enjoy watching, there's just so many people to name. My apologies if I didn't name you, but I enjoy everybody that's restreaming. You're all awesome.
There are so many restreamers.
I know.
It's always, I always find it fun to play my matches on channels where I've never been on.
Because really, I just like seeing some of the scenes, how the scenes look different as well is another amazing thing.
How much time do you spend on your scenes?
Honestly, every scene that I make, usually between 1 to 2 hours to set it up. I probably have like 50 different scenes saved in my Streamlabs. But another thing, speaking of time as well, that I want to mention is I give myself a personal limit that I usually play Tetris about 2 hours a day. Whether that's restreaming, comp, grinding, setting up streams. It's a general time box of like 2 hours. Sometimes I go a little bit over, but not that much. Sometimes a little bit less. But one thing that I like to do is have a strong balance in my life, where Tetris is a big part of it, my favorite hobby, but it's not the only thing that I do. I like to live a full balanced life in lots of different ways and have Tetris just be a part of it.
That's impressive, because you hear a lot of people who are going all out, either restreaming or playing the game or being active in the community behind the scenes. You just set a set time for yourself every day, 2 hours, doesn't matter what I do, 2 hours for Tetris and nothing more.
Exactly, because like I always make it a point to give my wife time every single night. We watch movies together, play Dungeons and Dragons together. When we have some friends come over, we host people, have a lot of fun with big groups of people. Or sometimes I might want to play some other games that aren't Tetris, like some Switch games, some other NES, SNES games. Or just in general, like maybe I just need to do some extra stuff for work. Like I just like to live a completely balanced life where everything I do just feels healthy and I'm not overly obsessing with one thing. Even though I enjoy Tetris, I don't want it to consume me to the point where I don't have anything else and then I start not enjoying it anymore. Because I just love the game too much for it to ever get to this point. And I'm going to be a part of the Classic Tetris community as long as I'm physically able to.
But it still feels like you do so much.
Because honestly, it's just the way I do things. Like I'm on the Discords all the time and I'm always conversing with people, even outside of those 2 hours. Like if I'm at work, for example, I have a 3 monitor setup at work where I have 2 monitors for my programming and 1 for my personal. And like I'm like coding stuff at work, and I'll just answer somebody's question they throw at me on Discord at the same time, just always keeping involved. So it may seem like I'm doing a lot, but because Discord's on my phone and on my personal computers, it's easy to just answer stuff and then like set a couple of things up when I'm on little work breaks.
I think the best part about the community and the best part of being a Tetris player are the real life meetups.
They are, unquestionably.
And you went to a couple of meetups. You commentated on a couple of meetups.
Yep.
You commentated on the Ohio qualifier in 2021. You commentated, I think, the silver bracket CTWC in 2022.
Yeah, I also did the bronze bracket in 2021, and I did Ohio again in 2022 as far as the meetup stuff.
Yeah, but what is the main difference about commentating by yourself in your game room compared to commentating in front of a live crowd?
A real life crowd cannot compare. It is 100% more awesome to do it at a real life crowd, because then I can see the crowd and I can really feed off their energy and pump their energy. Because like one of my favorite restreams I ever did was when I was commentating the Ohio finals in 2022. And I just like, it was the finals between Eric ICX and Huff. Like the two of them were on a collision course that faced each other pretty much the entire tournament. But the two of them were just like throwing down huge score after huge score, ended up going to a big decider. And I'm just like feeding the crowd, like, do we want more Tetris? Do we want more Tetris? Just hearing everybody screaming when I'm just firing them up like I'm like an entertainer on stage. And then at the end, whenever I got the chant going of Huff's got the stuff, that was me wanting to like really make Huff feel like a superstar right there, because he just defeated a really, really tough opponent, and the crowd was all in it, cheering and all feeling. I wanted to really like expand the moment whenever the moment was right there. And that's something you can't really do whenever you're at home in your game room.
Is that also your favorite moment as a commentator?
Yes, it was actually. So I actually answered another question for you. I was going to say that was my favorite moment, was getting the Huff's got the stuff chant at the end of that qual.
You hosted the bronze brackets in 2021, the CTWC bronze brackets in 2021. What was that for a tournament to give your commentary about?
Yeah, that was a fun tournament as well, because when I was originally doing that, there were some technical difficulties at the beginning where the bot inside of Maxout Club was actually talking over me and Bidwell. And I was trying my hardest to stay calm. Like, okay, we're being professional here. We're on stream. We got issues going on with technical stuff. Like, keep composed. Once everything got fixed up with that, like the first 30 minutes or 45 minutes, everything was fine. But it was really hype there doing that with Bidwell. And especially like at the end when Noel ended up winning, that was really cool.
What do you consider to be the main difference then between a CTWC stream and a personal restream?
I'd say CTWC restream, you have a lot more casual people in the chat that aren't in my regular personal restreams. Because CTWC is probably the one place, maybe monthly Tetris for Masters, you might see it as well. But one of the only places where people that don't play Tetris and just watch it, total casuals, come in and just watch like high-level players playing. So a lot of times my commentary style, I need to like scale it so that it works with casuals. Maybe not saying as much hell yeahs, maybe only saving it for like the really, really big moments. Maybe not trying to blow up the mic as much, but still trying to stay true to my style. Like I try to consider my audience with that. And there's no more scenario where I have to consider my audience more than when I'm doing CTWC.
Is it a difficult change to make whenever you stream on CTWC and Classic Tetris?
Not super difficult, but it's not natural either, if that's fair.
Yeah.
I do have to think about it, but it's not hard once I get into the flow.
And then you commentated during CTWC in 2022, primarily the silver bracket. Was that a goal coming true, dream coming true, giving commentary during CTWC?
Unquestionably. It was a big moment for me because originally I was only going to be commentating 1 or 2 matches on Classic Tetris 4 for the silver bracket. But then Kingsman ended up getting called over to do some stuff with the gold bracket on the second day. So I ended up getting to finish the silver bracket and call the finals as well with Chris Bidwell on the Classic Tetris 3 channel, and being able to get the whole crowd into it when they were all there bunched up to watch the silver finals, and it wasn't just like 3 or 4 people watching the early rounds. That to me was a dream come true. And like I've always wanted to be an upper tier commentator in Tetris. And another thing to add in as well, like the more that I'm involved in the community, the more that I feel I'm gravitating into more and more restreams. Like I just feel like my true calling in this game is doing restreams, and I want to do as many restreams as I can.
Total
Radness! Yo, this is Steve DeLuca of Total Radness, home of the Tetris World Order.
Bringing order to a chaotic world.
Ready to get rolling on the right side? Dominate the D-pad with a goofy foot controller. Visit TotalRadNES.com to score a controller modded by the inventor, me. We've also got TWO gear, CTWC approved hardware, and a ton of additional retrospective madness. Tune in to twitch.tv/Total Radness to watch Quaid and I take the BLV to 11. Also, don't miss the other homies at Aaron Jazamoki for the Boom Tetris house parties with the Kitchen Dwellers. And at Classic Vomps for those classic Tetris snugs. Be the best and keep it TWO for life.
We will return to the conversation in a minute, but first, the Peace Dependency Podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. Every episode will be available at full length over on the Peace Dependency Podcast YouTube channel. Subscribe, rate, and like our content to get us notified. There's also a Peace Dependency YouTube channel. On this channel, you'll see podcast highlights, mini documentaries, and other NES-related topic videos. You can follow us on the socials at Peace Dependency. Peace Dependency is active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Join the Tetris Friendlies Discord server. Besides the fact that it's the place to discuss anything Peace Dependency, you can also participate in some lovely friendlies or put your ELO on the line in the various ELO battles. If you have a suggestion who we need to have on the next Peace Dependency podcast, let us know through the socials or our Discord channels. Now, let's go back to the conversation. So there is a time that whenever you have your max out, you might consider to retire as a player and just be a full-time restreamer.
I would say this much. I would never retire as a player because I just genuinely love playing comp. I play so much better in comp than I do in grinding. I actually have over a 1600 elo despite having a 900k PB. So, like, because of the way that I play, like, I focus on consistency more than anything else. Where, like, today, for example, I got multiple 700Ks and an 800K. I usually get, like, one 800K every day and multiple 700Ks a day. Where it's deceptive because you think 900K PB, you're thinking somebody that might have fluked the game here or there may only get, like, 500s or 600s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the fact that I can regularly drop 700K games almost to where I feel desensitized to them, I relish that. And I love being able to beat players that are 1.0, 1.1, and in some cases even 1.2 PBs, despite having the lower overall PB. I relish the underdog role, and I really feed off the energy the commentators give in chat and overall, like, the people in chat that aren't commentating. I just love the competitive atmosphere. So I would say I'm still going to be playing a lot of comp when I max out, but I'm probably going to stop grinding after I max out because I have no desire to go for a 1.1 because of how long I've been at 900K.
I mean, how many one-offs did you have?
I only have one one-off right now.
Is it frustrating?
Yes. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, it is frustrating because I know I'm capable of it. I play Transition Trainer a lot. And so far, from a 120 line 500K start, I've got 9 maxes on Transition Trainer. So I know I'm capable of doing it. It's just putting it together in a real game.
Is the frustration more like you just cop max, or is the frustration like I've been waiting for this so long and other people who are joining the community later, or for example, Kingsman just maxed out. Those players are maxing out before me.
Now, honestly, when anybody gets a max out, I don't care if they've only been playing for like 6 months. I don't care if they've been playing for like 3 or more years. I am always the first person to congratulate them. I never feel like, oh, why did they get it before me? Why couldn't I? Because I recognize that there's a lot of natural talent that needs to be done in this game to be able to play it at the highest levels. And me being 40 years old, being able to stay competitive with people half my age, maybe even younger than that, is a win in itself. Like, my brain just can't see some of the super advanced stacking maneuvers that some of these players make. Like, I'm a very 1-2 dimensional stacker. It's no different than like playing chess, for example. Like, you see some 2,700 rated chess players against like 2,200 rated chess players. Those 2,200 rated chess players, like, they just cannot keep up with those guys simply because their brains physically can't see the moves these players can make. And yeah. I feel like I'm one of those players where I've just reached my overall limit as a Tetris player, and I'm 100% okay with that because I've taken this game further than I could have ever imagined in all the time that I played it. The frustration for me really is the fact that I've been so close for so long but just can't get over the last hump.
In what way do you want to max out then? Do you want to max out during a live qual? Do you want to max out during a competition? Do you want to max out during a grind session, or does it really matter?
Doesn't really matter. At this point, I have been a 900k player for so long, I just want the damn max. Pardon my French.
We talked a little bit about your consistency. You're number one on the ELO ranking with players of players who don't have a max. You are number 2 on the ELO ranking for players who don't have a 1.1. You're currently playing in CTL Division 4, in a division full of max-outers, full of up-and-coming players.
Yeah.
And you've played, at the time of this recording, 4 matches, and you won 3, lost 1.
And the one I lost was in a decider, actually.
But what is the key to staying this consistent?
Just playing the game and just saying, my goal is don't top out. Don't play so safe that you're just lining things out, but go into it with a mindset of make the other player beat you. And if they do, so be it. Because here's an example. Like, about a week or so ago, I played a CTM match in CTM Hopefuls against Leolio. Leolio dropped back-to-back 950Ks on me. I ended up getting swept 3-0. But I had no early top outs. The thing is, I made them work to beat me. If they're good enough to do that, so be it. I probably wasn't going to beat them anyway. I just want to make you work for it. You'd be amazed, honestly, how many players under like a 1.1 PB try to max out every game. Even when they're in competition, like, they just go into it saying, I'm going to score big, I'm going to score big, I'm going to score big. The secret in competition is it's not about scoring big. It's about surviving and making your opponent beat you. And even if you're like 200,000 points behind going into transition, like, if they top out right after transition, 200,000 points across 10 levels is really not that much to chase down, even if you're playing super safe. Because I would say, but that's my secret to comp and why I have a 1600 ELO is I play always to make people beat me. If they do, great. If they don't, I'll chase them down.
In that case, are you really an underdog if you're going against the 1.0, 1.1 players?
Now, I go into it with the mindset that I'm an underdog every time. It brings out the best in my game.
But you're not truly an underdog.
By ELO, I might not be, but by PB, if one of those players gets close to their PB, sometimes there's really nothing I can do. And then whenever they beat me, I'm like, hell yeah, good game. Like, I'm the first person to congratulate them. I never get salty about it.
Is there any way or any time in your playing career that you did get frustrated about the game, that you did get frustrated about anything Tetris-wise?
I would say there were 2 notable times. The first time was, I remember a CTM match that I played against Lonhang. At the time, Lonhang was a 1.1 player, and I was a 700K player. And I had a chance to beat Lonhang in game 4. I was up 2-1, and I had a 70,000 point chase down going into level 19, and I misdropped and screwed it up. And I'm just like, that would have been the biggest ELO upset of my entire career, and I just missed a line-outable chase down. Then in game 5, I was on such tilt, I topped it after 20,000 points. Obviously, I was congratulatory, but I was mad at myself more than anything else. Because it's like I had the win right here against somebody 300 points above me in ELO at the time, and I just choked it away. I would say the second time was early this year. Like, I was trying so hard to max out that it was like affecting my consistency a lot. And my ELO, which was as high as 1601 at one point, fell all the way to 1404. I lost almost 200 points because I was just trying so hard to get the max out. I was playing aggressive every game, and I was just playing like I had a hard time sometimes even getting a transition. Then I played a set against El Peltum and early top 3 consecutive times and lost 3-0 and then lost like 30 more ELO points. After that set, I was just like, I went upstairs, had a conversation with my wife, and I'm just like, I'm starting to really lose my love for the game because like I can't get this max out. My consistency's falling. Like I'm just losing all of a sudden. And I'm like, you know what I mean? But there was just something about that match where it's like, I have a reputation of like rarely early topping, and I early top 3 times in a row kind of thing. Where my wife basically told me, don't lose sight of your special sauce. That was the word she used, your special sauce. She said, what made Jonas so hard to beat? Because Jonas was consistent. Like Jonas would make other people beat him. Jonas would just like not top out.
Yeah.
And then she told me that is like, think of Jonas, think of your special, try to find your special sauce again. Then after that, I spent like the next month completely revamping my game to focus more on consistency and not just going aggro trying to score every game. And then my ELO started going way up, and then I eventually got it back into the 1600s after a few months.
It's so difficult to climb up the ELO ranking by playing matches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And without a BB improvement, so without adding quote unquote free ELO to your ELO rating.
Yeah.
I mean, losing 200 points, it's easier to do than gaining 200 points.
One question. But as I said, it took me several months to build it back up. Honestly, it probably took me about 5 to 6 months to get it back to 1600. Because like I would lose some matches and would go back down a little bit. But after I revamped my style to be consistency focused, like I felt that it started going up and up and up again. And now I feel I'm at the point where I feel genuinely comfortable playing comp against almost anybody. Because like I feel that I can consistently get the kill screen almost every single game if I have to chase somebody down.
So you feel comfortable to beat any max out or any 1.1 player?
I would say I feel comfortable against anybody under a 1.1. At a 1.1, it depends how consistent the 1.1 is. Because my general good comp games are usually about 700 to 800K. I would say like my overall comp PB is 882. I got that last month. For really, really good players, beating 800K is not that hard. But for players that aren't really super powerful on 19, beating 800K is actually much harder than it looks. It's a real threshold. And usually most players under a 1.1, if they do it, they usually only do it maybe once in the set. When you start getting to 1.1, you start getting to a threshold where like maybe you run into some players that can consistently dump 800s on you, maybe some can't. But 1.2s, I have beaten a few 1.2 players, usually only when they had bad games. I've never beaten a 1.2 player straight up where they weren't making mistakes.
Is it different than to play against a max outer versus playing against a non-max outer?
Honestly, for me, playing against a non-max outer, I actually feel that I play a little safer, and it actually throws off my style when I get to level 19. So I actually, paradoxically, play better against max outers.
Is it because the pressure is on then?
No, a lot of times I feel like I can just play my normal game, where sometimes against lower PB players, I subconsciously say, oh, these players can't really play 19. I'm just going to play super safe. But when I do that, sometimes it throws me off my style and I make some bad placements. It sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes that happens when I play lower PB players. And I've, on more than one occasion, like got upset by lower players when I was just off my game, trying to not play my normal game, trying to tailor it to them playing safer.
You are the owner, creator, main restreamer about Classic Tetris Wars. And to me, that is a place where you don't have your traditional 1v1 matches. When and how did you came up with the concept of CT Wars?
Now, CT Wars was something that I came up with when I started restreaming. It was around March of 2021. I did my first 1v1 restreams for low CTL divisions. And I just told myself, as I was starting to get more into it, as people were starting to enjoy my style, I'm like, I want to do something that other servers aren't doing. I want to stand out. And I thought to myself, all right, like, what aren't people doing? Like, I see people doing like 2v2 sometimes. I see people doing like a lot of 1v1s, obviously. And then one of the things that inspired me the most was when CTM and Vandrella did their Monday night chase down, when they had 6 people on the stream trying to chase down PBs. So when I saw that, I thought to myself, you know what? Let's see if I can go bigger. Let's see if I can get 8 people on the stream at the same time. So I set up a personal scene, and I found out that I could fit the 8 on there, and my computer was powerful enough to run it. So after that, I'm like, I'm going to come up with some ideas for events that nobody else has, because nobody else is doing 8-player streams. So that's when I came up with the Battle Royal idea, where like everybody's in different finishing orders. And then that idea really took off when I started growing the server and started running tournaments of it. Honestly, beyond my wildest dreams, how popular the Battle Royal event became. And then I started doing PB chase downs, which I call PBTV, which I actually personally asked Vandrell if it was okay that I did that, because he did CTM chase downs, and he said, as long as you call it a different name. So he was cool with that. Yeah, but I wanted to try and keep doing other things as the server grew. That's where I came up with my consistency duel, where it's like over 8 games, who is the more consistent player based on their PB. I tried to do 4 versus 4 team clashes where teams got together. And then I also did the 2 versus 2 versus 2 versus 2 pairs challenges, where you have pairs playing against each other with 8 on the screen. And the one that I'm currently working on now and still fine-tuning the format, which is an elimination duel called the ladder attack, where people start like getting eliminated as they go deeper in based on their finishing orders. It's just more and more me wanting to just do different things and always keep things fresh, so people can just always look to something new to do in the server. Because so many other places, whether it's CTM, CTL, Classic Tetris Teams, Classic Tetris Gauntlet, they're all mostly just 1v1. So I'm like, I don't want to do something that everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Like, I want people to like have an outlet for something different, and just everybody just like coming in for like a different change of pace. And I just want to keep fostering that with the 8-player on the screen theme as we keep making more events.
Is it something you want to keep 8 players, or do you want to expand someday?
Yeah, I want to always keep it as 8 players for a couple reasons. Like, 1, it's been that way for so long, and it's the trademark of the server. And 2, I don't know if I can handle more than that on one stream at the same time. And then, like, even if I could fit them on there, it would just look too cluttered. I just feel 8's the magic number with that. But one thing I am doing is I'm looking to strongly expand the server in general, to have more restreamers helping out with it and more regular events coming with it, so that every week there's always something going on in Classic Tetris Wars, to make it a regular event, just like Friendlies is like every Friday and every Monday. I'm looking to have Classic Tetris Wars coming up, starting the first of the year, probably every Wednesday, calling it Wednesday Night Wars, something like that.
Do you consider yourself one of the bigger promotions, or do you want to be one of the bigger promotions?
My goal with the server is to be able to get to about the same level as CTL and Friendlies and Gauntlet, where it's one of the bigger overall Classic Tetris servers, has hundreds and hundreds of members, always has events going on, and it's just constantly expanding and growing, and it's just a huge integral part of the community. But at the same time, there's no way I'm ever going to get it to the level of CTWC and CTM. Those 2 servers are light years ahead of even those other servers I mentioned. So my goal would be to get it to about the same level as CTL or Friendlies. Right now, I feel that it's just a notch below that. Maybe 3rd tier if you want to consider the 2nd tier things like Gauntlet and Friendlies and CTL.
Yeah.
But I feel that with the way that I'm expanding and the fact that I'm finally starting to get other restreamers to come on, Cullen's helped me run a lot of events. DMJ, one of my favorite players in the community and also a great person as well, has also helped me restream some events. And I have a few other restreamers that I've been like asking to help restream. They're starting to get things set up. I feel that over time and into 2023, as I get the regular weekly events going and as I start getting more tournaments running, I feel without a doubt in my mind I can get to that level. But I don't want to go anywhere beyond that because I feel it's as far as I can go with the fact that I only spend about 2 hours a day playing and restreaming Tetris, and the fact that the two servers I mentioned that are bigger, CTM and CTWC, are just far too established to really compete with.
Do you have a notepad with all the ideas you have?
In my head, basically. I'm just constantly spitting out ideas, and I'm constantly talking to everybody in the Classic Tetris Wars servers about them. And as I mentioned earlier during this, I solicit feedback from everybody, and I love to take ideas from everybody. And I also love to take constructive criticism as well if there's something I'm not doing right. Because I want the community that I'm building inside of Classic Tetris Wars. We're actually up to about 310 members now, so we're starting to really get up there. I want it to really feel like a player server. Like, I don't want it to feel like something that, okay, I set all the rules, I do my own thing, like it's my vanity project. No, I want to be someone in the community that's constantly pushing things forward. And I feel that in my server, everybody having an open forum to give me ideas or give me criticism.
Yeah.
And then like actually showing these players that I listen to them and I use them in some cases. I just want it to feel like a fun place where like there's no ELO on the line. There's no rankings on the line. People are just coming to like let loose and play something different than the normal 1v1s they always play.
You slowly get the top players in our community playing in your events. So is it a goal that you have the top players compete in your event, or do you want it to be like an event for the middle tier players?
One thing I do in Classic Tetris Wars is I have different editions of events so that all players of all skill levels can equally play. Like some of the events I do amateur editions, which are only for non-max out players. I do pro editions, which for 1.1 or 1.2 and above players, just to keep the fields always balanced. And even people that might be like 200 or 300K players, sometimes I might even make a lower amateur edition that's only for 500K players or lower, so that everybody has an outlet based on the interest of players that want to play to be able to play Tetris with these forums. You don't have to be a max out or even a rollover player to play in these events. You can be like a 500K player or even lower and still play in the exact same format with the exact same commentary, but with like skilled opponents. But overall, I do have a goal for major tournaments that I run to be able to get most of the elite top players to play them. Because what I generally do, like 2 to 3 times a year, I like to run a major tournament with a Matcherino. And that's usually where I attract some of the big names. I'm hoping the next big ones that I do early in 2023, I'm able to get a lot of the big name players like Eric, Fractal, Dog, Andy, Alex T, Huff, like Gerald Freeman, Sid Nev, like Tommy NTG, Tristop. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Miles, like SV Nestris. I mean, I can keep going on and on and on about like top players. A lot of them actually have played in a lot of my Classic Tetris Wars events before, and a lot of them will really enjoy them too. But most of those players, if I can get them in the really big tournaments, I really think would be a big goal as I continue to grow the server, be able to really say this is one of the premier servers in Classic Tetris.
So those major tournaments, is it always the same format, like always a Battle Royale?
Now, originally, the first few tournaments I ran were always a Battle Royal, but I recently did a Team Clash tournament, which actually had drafts where the top seeded players after the quals picked the players for their teams. And it's currently going on right now. We're currently in the second round of that tournament. And I have 2 divisions for it. I have the division for the top players, and I also have division 2 for a lot of the lower level players as well. So it's really inclusive.
You have different roles in your server, like Super Grandmaster, Expert. And what's the thought about that?
Okay, I set that up so that everybody in the server can be classified based on overall skill. And I do a combination of both PB and ELO for that, as well as in some cases, tournament performances, so that everybody based on a certain title, you have a general idea where their skill level is, and it's not just a PB number.
Yeah.
Now, the inspiration from that, some of them I took from like, what's a good sounding name for a skill level? And some of them I took because like I liked how they sounded close to chess titles. Like some of them I took inspiration from chess titles, and some of them I just took inspiration from like a decent sounding name for their skill. But I just feel overall it's like fitting to where they are. And I always want players in the servers to be shooting for something.
Yeah.
Because like whether it's playing in the events or just playing in other events, it's like they always have goals to go for that aren't like, okay, I want to win this tournament and get to this PB. And another thing, too, that I'm going to be adding soon in Classic Tetris Wars is achievements, which are going to be additional things based on how you do in Classic Tetris Wars events themselves, starting at the beginning of 2023. I'm currently setting that up now, that are going to give players in the server even more things to shoot for. I always want players to be able to keep pushing ahead and find new things to do in the server and new things to shoot for as they play events.
So who are the regulars in Classic Tetris Wars? Who play all the events?
Yeah, Sidnev is probably my biggest regular among elite level players that have played most of my events. Sidnev plays a lot. Mouse is starting to play a decent amount now. SV plays a lot too. Like Gerald Freeman's been playing a lot. Those are among the more elite players. Some of the other players that are around the middle tier that I feel have been playing a lot. I would say Penguin Panic's played in a lot of them. Roman's played in a lot of them. March has played in a lot of them as well. I mean, I give a lot of credit to March. March just loves to play in competition.
March plays 24/7, 365.
I got to give March a lot of credit because March is probably one of the coolest people in the entire community of just like being friendly and just having a pure love for the game. I mean, it's just amazing. Like some of what March does with Elo Bows and what March does with friendlies. DMJ is another player that's played in a lot of events. Hasn't been playing in a whole lot lately because they've been really busy. But DMJ's helped run a lot of events, played in a lot of them. Another Lonhang's been playing in a lot of events, big regular.
When I first hosted the Elo Clash on a four-way screen, I had a difficult time to focus on 4 fields at the same time. How do you manage it to focus on 8 fields at the same time?
I just have extremely quick reflexes and I'm just used to it. Because I mean, I just put on a screen, like my eyes are just constantly wandering around and I'm just like really zoned in and focused. And to me, it just comes naturally.
Yeah. But what are the things you focus on when you give commentary on an 8-way?
On an 8-way, I usually look for whenever somebody's in a dig or whenever somebody's got a pretty big lead, or maybe they're like trailing by a decent amount. Like I just like to focus on like digs and like overall score gaps. Like I usually don't go too deep into any individual games because there's so many of them going.
It's the same as hosting a qualifier or something like that. Like focusing on digging, focusing on major scores and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And because there's so many games going on, there's usually something happening in every game. The other 7 might be just plodding along, but there's always like one game where like somebody's in a dig or like somebody's on a really hot pace. So there's always something for me to commentate on, and it helps me just keep my mind fresh too. So it's not like, okay, I'm just watching these two wait for something to happen.
One of the most difficult parts of hosting 8 players at the same time is coordinating all the players that they are playing at the same time. So what are the challenges in that?
I would say, like, whenever I do tournaments, it actually gets fairly difficult because of time zones and just overall availability. So what I do for tournaments is I try to find a time that the majority of the 8 players that are in a round can play. And then the 1 or 2 that can, I allow them to pre-record 8 consecutive games. I let them do it on a hidden alt that only I know about when I'm running the event. I go in, I give them an auth word, I verify it. And then with nobody else knowing the alt, nobody else knowing the scores, and me having verified it, if they can't make it, I play that bot against the live players.
What are the expansion plans for Classic Tetris Wars?
I would say the first thing that I want to do is starting on the 1st of 2023, a little over a month from now, I'm going to be instituting the regular weekly events that are going to be at the same time every week, which for me is going to be Wednesdays, probably at about 2200 UTC. And I'm probably going to be doing like additions for like pros and amateurs, that it's going to be a regular event on the Classic Tetris calendar, the same way that like Friendlies is on Friday, for example, and also on Mondays. That's one thing I want to do. And also Colin, who has been helping me run a lot of events, is probably going to be doing some regular events on Sundays as well. So there's going to be 2 days a week where Classic Tetris War is going to be regularly playing, which would match the times like Friendlies is playing. So I feel that it's not too much overkill, but it's enough that lots of different players in different time zones and skill levels are able to play it. That's the first thing I'm going to be doing to expand it. The next expansion plan is getting more restreamers involved. So where if they want to run individual Classic Tetris Wars events outside of the normal scheduled ones on the Wednesdays and Sundays, they'll be able to run them impromptu and get a lot of players involved. So that even if players can't make those two events, as the restreamers grow, they'll be able to play in those. That's the next thing. And then beyond that, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be adding an achievement system so that when people, let's say people that have played in 5 events, people that have played in 10 events, or like people that have won events, like people that have won a pro event, won an amateur event, they're going to be given special achievement roles in the server that everybody can shoot for as additional things to shoot for in addition to the titles. That's another thing. And then probably one of the bigger things I'm going to do as well is I'm going to be putting in score tracking so that everybody that plays in Classic Tetris Wars events, all their games that they play are going to be put into a database with what their final score is and what their line count is, so that you can go to a spreadsheet or a website and see what all of your stats are in Classic Tetris Wars events for like averages, transition rate, kill screen rate, overall like percentage of PB, all those stats you want to see on yourself with how you've done an event. You'll be able to go to a page and see them.
How do you want to pull that off?
Yeah, I'm probably like, I've done some web design before. I made a website originally for Gauntlet that Sharky was using for a while and still uses a little bit. And I might make a website for Classic Tetris Wars, or I might use a really complex Google Doc for Classic Tetris Wars. But either way, I'm going to make it user-friendly, so where I just punch in a score number and the line count, and then all the calculations will be done from there. I just feel it's a little extra flavor to put in that people can just see overall everybody's stats and get an idea of like where everybody stands and how they play at events.
And it's also something you can bring up whenever you restream them.
Exactly. Just like tail of the tape kind of conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to be able for me to find more ways to bring that esports feel into Tetris. Because a lot of times when you watch sports on TV, you hear a lot of stats being read off.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And what are the major events in 2023?
I'm definitely going to be doing the 4th edition of the Classic Tetris Worlds Battle Royal Tournament. Probably going to be starting quals for that after the Christmas holidays, early in the year. I'm planning on doing that. I'm also planning on doing some other tournaments that are potentially like DAS-specific tournaments for elite DAS players. I might also do like tournaments for consistency duels, more tournaments for like pairs and teams. Just overall, like tournaments of different kinds that aren't just the battle royals. In addition to having the regular events that are being done both by me and Colin, and then by other restreamers that we get involved.
Is the Battle Royal, that should be the highlight of the year?
It is. The Battle Royal is our flagship event, and that's the one that I said I want to try and get all the big name players in. But 2023 is my goal is to really grow CTW into being on the level of CTL and friendlies as like a top 2nd tier Tetris server.
Yeah.
Because I feel that it has things that like other servers don't have, but it does it in a way that is like everybody feels so inclusive as well.
The first time I heard about CTW or Classic Tetris Wars was, I didn't know a lot about you, and so I was like, you see sometimes in the promote channel on CTM very obscure servers like with 30 members, and then they want to organize a tournament, and I'm like, okay, cool, not gonna join it. But this slowly grew and grew and grew. That was like, okay, I do need to check it out.
And that's the thing is like, I've grown Classic Tetris Wars organically. I never tried to force anything. Like even when we were as small as like 20 or 30 players and I would run my first events, there would be so much imbalance in those events because I didn't have enough players to do like pro editions and amateur editions. You would have people like Sidnev just destroying people with 600k PBs.
It's pretty much what Sidnev does in the Benelux.
I know. Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Sidnev at CTWC as well. And one of the coolest things was Sidnev ended up beating Alex T in the round of 16. And that was actually Sidnev's last achievement left to get the highest title inside the Classic Tetris Wars server, which I called Super Grandmaster. And to be able to personally promote him to Super Grandmaster live after he won that match was a big highlight for me.
That is so amazing.
Yeah, he knew what it was too. So when I went up to Sidney, I said, "You know what else that win got you?" He had the biggest smile and said, "Super Grandmaster." He knew. He knew. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Just
Yeah, that was a big highlight for me.
Sidnev is so involved in playing everything. Like I met Sidnev a week after you met Sidnev in Portland. I drove to his house, and Sidnev is
Yeah.
such a genuine nice person. He's so involved in playing, wants to play everything. Just a great human being.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Sidnev is probably one of my biggest supporters of CTW events. I would say, along with, as mentioned, DMJ was a big early supporter as well, one of the earliest members in the server. Just like Sidnev and like DMJ and a few others, as I've mentioned, like SV Nestris, among the elite players, they have really done a lot to like not only grow Classic Tetris Wars into what it is, but just keep pushing it as it's gone bigger.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, okay, they just at the beginning and just forgot. Like they still play the events, and they still, like, even when they've become like elite top 10 in the world players, they still play amongst everybody else that might be like only top 100 players.
That's the beauty of our community.
No, and honestly, one of my favorite things with the community, and this is actually the quote on the CTWC Championship trophy, that was a quote from Jonas, saying, "If you're a high visibility player, it's on you to move the community in a positive direction."
Yeah.
Now, I look at that quote and I say to myself, I'm not a high visibility player because obviously, like, there's like anybody in the top 100 could eat me for lunch. But I feel I'm a high visibility member of the community. And I feel that through that visibility, I have the ability to make differences in people's lives and push the community in a positive direction. So
Yeah.
I just take a lot of inspiration from that quote of Jonas's. And I do that with Classic Tetris Wars and any restreaming event that I do.
It's not only the high visible players, but it's everyone who does something is moving the community forward.
Exactly. And I just feel that with the vehicles that I have and that I've built with Classic Tetris Wars and from doing other restreams, I feel that I can make a difference.
Yeah.
And I want to take every opportunity that I can to make a difference. And I've told numerous people this too. I say, being able to make a difference in the community, even if it's a minute one, it means more to me than any PB or any comp win or any tournament win ever could be.
Yeah.
Because one thing that's important with all the players in the community is that we're all people. Like, we might be in different walks of life. We might have different incomes. We might be in different situations. It doesn't matter because we're all here and we're all Tetris players. And I view our Tetris players first and foremost as people. And that's what we need to do as the events go. I don't want to be just a tournament organizer. I want to be somebody that's a genuine friend to all of our players and have people really want to be around the events that I run. Because to me, we're all the same. It doesn't matter if you're a rollover player. It doesn't matter if you're a world champion. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out. I will treat you the same way no matter what. And I want to be able to be that with everybody else and have everybody in my server act the same way around everybody else and foster that environment.
Yeah, that is so beautifully said.
Because I want people, especially younger players in our community that might still be in high school or even in college, the most important thing is for them to excel in the classrooms as well, and for them to excel in the real world whenever they get out there and start getting the professional jobs, whenever they get married, whenever they start having families down the road. I want to be able to make a difference on them with the positive atmosphere that I create that'll stay with them long after this game.
Yeah. Let them learn something, and hopefully they take it with them for the rest of their lives.
Now, that is the biggest goal of all, because in the end, while this is a fun game and we all love it, it's still just a game. And that's part of why I mentioned I limit myself to 2 hours a day with it, because it's still just a game. And I want to set a good example to our players as well, that no matter what you do in Tetris, the most important thing is to still live a very balanced life. And I want our players to be able to live a balanced life like that and be able to look up to me as an example as well. I want to be able to be a good role model for our players.
I mean, like I said, that is so beautifully said.
Thank you so much.
Yes. But, this is the December episode of PDP. 2023 is just around the corner. We talked about the expansion or the plans for Classic Tetris Wars in 2023.
Yep.
But the community or the state of Tetris, nobody knows where the game will be at the end of 2023. But what do you think will happen next year?
I would say the rolling revolution is going to continue to expand because of what we saw at CTWC this year. Just the insane play in the later rounds, and even some of the earlier rounds as well. Just players making level 29, what we used to call kill screen, is more like thrill screen now, just look like a second transition. Just seeing how far that can be pushed. I mean, with players even playing aggressively on and trying to score if we get line caps, which I've already put line caps in CTM, for example.
Yeah.
Just seeing how much this game can actually be pushed by rolling. Or maybe even somebody might come up with a new playstyle we haven't even thought of yet, because nobody thought of rolling 2 to 3 years ago. I would say that's one thing. Rolling is going to continue to dominate the higher levels of the community. And CTWC next year, I think, is going to be even more wide open because all of the top rollers are going to be starting to get closer together in skill. And it's not going to just be a handful of people that have really mastered it. So I think it's going to be much more wide open at the higher levels of competition. And another thing that I think is going to happen in 2023 is I see a major comeback occurring for the DAS play style. And I say that because of how insanely thrilling that the CTWC DAS World Cup in Germany was this year, which brought a real throwback to the old 2010 CTWC where kill screen was really the end. Those matches were so insane and so hard fought that I think there is a huge hunger for DAS play style events that is just waiting to be tapped into. And I think is already starting to be tapped into. So I think DAS is going to make a huge comeback as a secondary event.
And what are your personal goals or plans for 2023?
My first goal is to get my max out. And then I say after that, my next goal is to just continue expanding CTW to be one of the biggest servers I could possibly make it. Because honestly, getting a max out, I think, would be my last goal as a player.
Yeah.
Whereas, as I mentioned earlier, I'm still going to play just as much comp because I genuinely love comp, but I have no desire to go for a higher PB.
I mean, I hope you get your max out very soon.
Yeah, I think I will. Because honestly, the way my consistency's gotten, sure, I have a 900k PB, but I also have 15 900k scores. I also have 20 or 30 700k 19 starts. I have about 150 800ks. That PB is very deceptive because I built my consistency up a lot over this year.
I mean, Grand Designs, I said it before and I will say it again. You're such a passionate human being about classic Tetris and about everything you want to do in your life. And I appreciate it very much that you joined me on the podcast this month.
Thank you so much. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And with that all being said, this will be the end of the Peace Dependency podcast. Thank you all for listening and make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to join the Tetris Friendly's Discord server and follow me on the socials at Sir Mazer. For now, have a great Tetris month and I will see you all in January. Bye. The Peace Dependency podcast was brought to you by Total Red NES. Shop your Goofy Food Controller TWO merch and CTWC approved hardware on TotalRedNES.com.